Hi, I'm Veronica Lee. This is your weekly transformational forecast for the week of October 18th, 2021. This week I am now 55 years old. I had a wonderful weekend with my children celebrating my birthday. And I will say that it was a bit bittersweet last week as I was approaching this age, not just because of some significance. Let's say I can now get a discount at some of the health food stores nearby, but more that my husband was 55 when he passed away. So it's a little bit of a significant number in some way. And at the same time, spending the weekend with my family was absolutely beautiful. My children are my world, and they made it very special. That being said, I want to tune in to this energy of the week for you and for all of us to give you a sense as to what might be coming up for you and what is going on collectively. Beautifully, things are shifting in a much lighter way, and so it doesn't feel quite as dense this week. We have just kind of come out of Mercury retrograde, and as I've said many times in the past, I'm not an astrologer. I just sort of keep a little bit of a sense as to what's going on. And knowing that when we are at the tail end of the Mercury retrograde, there are still the residual effects of perhaps miscommunication, things going a little wonky with electronics and such. And so just keeping that in mind that, things are just now starting to come out but aren't quite clear. And not, again, that it's a bad thing. If you look at some of my past weekly transformational forecasts, I bring a little bit of information around the quality and that it isn't necessarily a bad thing when we're looking at communication and such. This week we are moving toward this heart opening space, moving toward, really in the thick and juiciness of Libra. And in that way, looking more closely at not just our relationships with those we love, but our relationships, not just with ourselves either, but with people who are maybe the next layer out or acquaintances. And the reason I want to speak to that is because in order to create this harmonious, quality in our world, we can't just focus on those that we love and cut everybody else off. We have these, extending circles, right? When you put a pebble in the pond, you'll see that, the circles that consecutively move out, but of course they're softer and more gentle, but they do have that effect, touching more than just our inner circle. The inner circle is important, cultivating, nurturing, opening our hearts to those relationships and looking for the places in which we are most aligned and most connected and keeping things open. And of course, obviously we set boundaries and such, but it's really about deepening those connections. The next layer out will be the acquaintances and friends and such, but what I'm looking at is sort of the periphery, and we don't want to get into the point where we're ignoring that periphery, that we think it doesn't matter or that we don't have to extend ourselves, but recognize that we may not have as much in alignment or need to necessarily stretch so far to try to make things work with those people, but there is a sense of harmony that we want to continue to cultivate. And that might look like having a conversation and says, oh, I see you, I see your point of view, we're very different people, and that's great. Here's what we do have in common. As we continue to move through this change in the way we see things, we are going to notice that how we are and have been seeing things has been quite narrow, right? It's been like this way or that way. And that keeps us sort of focused in some ways, which is good. Here's what I want, here's what I'm moving toward. But it also can narrow our scope in terms of the other entities, people, experiences that might be beneficial by opening ourselves up more and having those connections and conversations. With the whole divisiveness that we're experiencing, much of that is based on this narrowness of thinking and this narrowness of heart, and not being willing to see that we can come from two different places and still want the same results, the same joy for everybody. So with that, expect some, maybe a few more bumps in the road. Literally for me, my car was having some issues with tires yesterday, so I'm getting new tires today. But also in terms of communication, it might be a little wonky, but again, it's opening that heart and recognizing that those on the out circle area, the outlying circle, can have an important part in our world, and that we want to be able to be an important part in their world, in the sense of harmony and peace, and recognizing the commonality that we are all one, that we all do want the same thing. We want health for all, we want love for all, we want joy for all, we want harmony for all on these very deep soul levels. And so it's keeping those ideals in mind, that we all want those same things, even though we might approach them very differently. And until next week, have a great one.